ads is super complex, super frustrating if you're managing it yourself. And I just wanted to put together this short video. It's nothing complicated and nothing thorough, but I just wanted to hone in on some key points that might happen with your account. Let's check it out. Alright, so we're just going to enable auto tagging in case it isn't already enabled. So if you go over to all campaigns on the left, down to settings, and then up and across to account settings, auto tagging, that's the only thing we're looking at this point. Just make sure that that is ticked, and if it's not, tick it, hit save. That's just going to make sure that it's sending across into analytics a lot of our AdWords stuff. Okay, so save that, we're done. Okay, so the next thing I just want to touch on is keyword match types, and this is super important. The main reason I'm here is because a lot of the time if you go in to look at somebody's account, they're using broad match terms, and I almost never use broad match terms because it just kind of gives Google a green light to spend your money on irrelevant traffic. So if you're using terms that are broad without any like punctuation, see how in the example keyword here, women's hats has no punctuation. And these other ones do. There's pluses, there's quotation marks, there's the square brackets. This is basically saying that, look, broadly, this is just what we're looking to advertise towards. If you look at the example searches here that would show your ad, buy ladies' hats, so it's associated women and ladies together, which is fine. So if you were selling women's hats, buy ladies' hats is probably applicable. But you can see here in this second example, women's clothing, it's associating hats as a type of clothing, so it's making that sort of jump into a broader area. If you just sold women's hats, you probably are not going to convert as well on something like women's clothing because it's way broader, so it's probably not all that relevant. So what you want to be looking at doing is using these other three match types. Almost never broad match. There are exceptions, but like I said, I don't have many accounts that actually use broad match at all. So what I would suggest is you use exact match a lot, and you also use phrase match, and you also use what's called broad match modifiers. So the way that these all work is just right here, and you can read up on that. But I just want you to make sure that if you are using broad match, there's keywords in there without any punctuation, no pluses, no quotation marks, no squares. Have a read of these and look at how you can improve this. A lot of the time in the ad group, for something like women's hats, it's not uncommon to have women's hats and exact in that group, a phrase in that group, and then a broad match modifier in that group, because then it covers all of your bases. The broad match modifiers are actually really cool. So just to summarize, it makes sure that if somebody searches something, that these two terms have to occur in the search string somewhere. So it's really good for a lot of those long tail keywords where people are writing things like, winter hats for women and things like that. Yeah, where it can be like a little bit broad, but you're also making sure that they're keeping these two terms in there. For some reason, a lot of people don't know about broad match modifier terms. I don't know why, because they're pretty essential. So that's pretty much it for here. I just want you to make sure that you go through, and if you have broad match keywords, maybe look at adding some of these. One of the most important things that you need to do is keyword control and managing exactly which search terms show your ad. So the best way to see how that's going is to check out your search term report. So if you go into your campaign on the left-hand side, and then go to keywords and then up to search terms, it's going to give you a list for the time period up in the top right hand corner of all of the search terms that people have searched for and clicked on your ad and that have cost you money. And what you're going to find is that a lot of these aren't relevant to your service, depending on how relevant your actual keywords are and how well you've set those up. So like this one here is a painter, an old inactive account again, and these guys are showing to a lot of very broad terms. You can see, for example, here, road paint remover. They've paid $2.23, 2 clicks for that term, and that's completely not relevant to what they do. They paint houses. So what you really need to be doing is actively monitoring your search term report and going through and adding negative keywords to kind of clean out all of this irrelevant traffic. So the next video, we'll talk about negative keywords. So as I said in the last video, you want to be going through your search term report and seeing all of the traffic that you're paying for, the people are searching. And you want to be adding negative keywords in to restrict what ads you're showing to people based on the search terms. There's a lot of the time your ad will show and you'll end up getting clicks on for terms that aren't relevant to your business. Those people aren't likely to convert. So these guys here are painters, and like none of this is my work, so don't jump on me for this. But I've just highlighted there's one here that's super irrelevant, and it's wages for master painters. So, I mean, anytime something like this occurs, like wages, you can assume that that's pretty not relevant, right? Like that person is researching, what the wages are for master painters, possibly to become a master painter. So what's happened is this person has probably had phrase match and just had master painters. So the phrase match means that these two terms just had to occur in the string anywhere, and that's what's happened here. So wages for has appeared in front of it. So for this one here, we can assume it's not relevant. So let's go up here, we'll click on it, we'll add it as a negative keyword. And there's the different levels you can do it: an ad group, a campaign, or like in a whole account sort of level with a negative keyword list, and you can apply campaigns to it. And a lot of the time, that's what I prefer. These guys don't look like they've got an account negative keyword list set up. But you can do that in the tools, and I definitely recommend that. Because for someone like this, anytime the word wages appears in a search, these guys just aren't interested in showing their ad. It's just not relevant at all. These guys are painters trying to sell a painting service. So anyone typing anything for wages is irrelevant. So we want to negative it out. If you had an account keyword list here, you would go there. I'm just going to click on campaign for now. So what it's got here, you can see the square brackets mean it's an exact match negative keyword. So this is basically saying you won't show your ad for this exact term that gets searched. If someone typed in wages for master painters in Sydney under this, it would still show our ad. So we want to be a little bit broader. So the way we would do that is make it a phrase match. So I use phrase match for pretty much all of my negatives, or exact match. I don't do broad. So this basically is saying that, yeah, if wages appears in anywhere in the search term, don't show our ad. So that's a negative phrase match keyword. So hit save, and then it's applied it. So that's how you control the flow of your keywords. Go through your search term report and make sure you're adding in negative keywords, please. I want to talk about keywords and ad groups and how you should chop them up. The one thing that I think you just need to think about when you are deciding which ad groups to have or which keywords go into it, you really just want to make sure that in the ad group, look at each keyword and then refer back to the ads for that ad group and ask yourself, are they actually like specific to the keyword in that ad group? A lot of the time I see people will have a very long list of keywords and varying keywords in an ad group. The problem is that you can't create ads that talk directly to those specific keywords. So if ever you go through your list of keywords and think, okay, well, I could actually have a more specific ad talking to this keyword, that's a good sign that you need to break it out into a different ad group. So let's use an example here. This is an old account, not my account, totally inactive. It's for a painter. And they basically just had it broken up into these different elements here for painting. So it's focusing around the keyword of painting. And for example here they've got bathroom. So if you click on bathroom, we've got bathroom painters, bathroom painting, painters of bathroom. So basically sort of insinuate that if somebody was looking at getting their bathroom painted. So to check that that is actually relevant, you would just check back to the ads, have a look at the ad, and you can see it says like experts in painting bathrooms. It's like the first headline that you see. and these are terribly written ads, so you need to be a lot more creative than this. But it's speaking directly to those keywords. If we go back to the ad groups, go to the next one down, ceiling painters. So if somebody's looking to get their ceiling painted and they use those keywords, we've got relevant ads that say experts in painting ceilings, etc., etc. So that's sort of where you want to get to, is where you're specifically breaking these up. See, if we had an ad group with bathroom painters and ceiling painters, it's tough to write an ad that speaks specifically to those two topics. You would kind of have to just make it a general ad saying, internal house painters or something like that, which isn't very specific and probably isn't going to get a lot of click-throughs. So whenever you're doing the ad groups, just make sure that your keywords in each ad group are fairly related, fairly specific, and then just check back to your ads in here and just make sure that they are actually speaking to that and they're specific. Something that's really important is to keep an eye on your quality score. So if you go into a campaign, click on the left-hand side down here, and then go across to keywords. You can only see quality scores at the keyword level, so you have to go on keywords here. If you go in ad groups or campaigns, you're not going to see it. And if you can't see it in this little column over here, one of these columns, go up into columns and add it. I like to just have a look at the quality score, ad relevance, landing page, expected click-through rate. So basically, what the quality score is, it's Google's attempt to identify how good the quality is of your ads and how they're sort of connecting to the user. And you get a score out of 10. The higher your quality score, the more your ad gets shown and the less it costs you per click. So you really want to, and you really need to be making sure that you have a high quality score. Generally 7 or above. If it's under 7, you probably need to do a bit of work. Even if it's 7, try and get it up to 8, 9, or 10. So what I can see here, and I apologize for blurring out so much, this is actually an active account, so I need to just protect some things here. But we've got the 3 components of quality score. There's ad relevance, there's landing page experience, and then there's expected click-through rate. So these 3 elements, I'll go through them quickly. Ad relevance really talks about how well your keywords and your ads tie together, and it looks at keywords and matchings and a few different other factors to basically make sure that your ad is relevant. And that's where we go back to making sure that you've got really specific keywords in the ad groups and that they're tying into each other really well, and there's not too many keywords in an ad group. Landing page experience, it's basically when people go to that landing page, is it relevant? Is it going to, are there keywords there that tie into the ad and the keyword? And are people bouncing straight away? Are those kind of things? So you need your landing page to tie in. It's a flow effect. So it goes from keyword to the ad, then to the landing page. They all have to tie in and integrate. And then there's expected click-through rate, which is a little bit harder to control. But a lot of the time, if your ad isn't very appealing, or it's not you're not bidding a high enough amount, or like a few other different factors, you won't get a very high expected click-through rate. So it's also historical. So if you have an old account that's been poorly managed, it can be tough to get that expected CTR back up. So that's a little bit harder. The other 2 are much easier to fix. Expected click-through rate is a slower burn. So for you guys, all you need to do is just check your quality score and see how it looks. And I'd encourage you, if you are below average in any of these 3 columns, just do a little bit of research. Just see how you can improve ad relevance, or say, quality score bad. Do a Google search. Quality score bad. Ad relevance below average. How to fix, and you'll find something for sure. But just be aware that quality score is really important. How many ads should you have in an ad group? I say 3. I will sometimes use 2, but I prefer 3. And the reason we do that is you want to be split testing the 3 to make sure that you're covering all bases. You want to see which ones are performing better than others, which headlines seem to be doing better, which descriptions, Again, I've gone back to this terrible painting example, but it's set up with 3 ads. That's kind of what you want. I would also say that you just need to check that you've got the right setting on. So if we go back to our campaign on the left and go to settings, and then go down into additional settings, the ad rotation is what you're looking for. When you set up a new campaign these days, Google tries to get you optimized, so that basically uses their algorithm to determine which ads do the best. I'm still not trusting that at this point. I've done some experiments, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. I would say, as a default, just do not optimize, rotate the ads indefinitely. What this is going to do is it's going to try and show your ads evenly. They're not doing it perfectly evenly anymore. Unfortunately, there's still some interference here. But I would say, as the default, just make sure this is set, and then go back into your ads and make sure you've got probably 3 ads. Any more than that, so the reason you want to do this is you want to probably, at this level, just check your click-through rate and see which ads are getting the highest click-through rate. If there's a dead set loser after, like 1,000 impressions or more, depending on how long you want to test it, then you probably should pause that ad. And what I like to do is I like to see which of the other 2 ads has the highest click-through rate, and I try and emulate that a little bit, move some components around, and then start new testing on that. And the reason you don't want probably more than 3 is that it takes a lot longer to get statistical significance, because you'll have 4 or 5 ads that are getting distributed impressions, supposedly fairly evenly. So it's going to take you a bit longer to figure out which one is actually better performing. I like 3. It's just a nice middle ground. I'm not going to cover responsive search ads. I think if you're managing yourself at this point, it's probably just best to do these manual ads. Let's go back to our painting example to talk about landing pages. If you're splitting up your ad groups like you should be into different topics with good keyword groupings, the landing page that you're sending people to from these ads really should be tied in with what you're advertising. So if you are talking about bathroom painters in your keywords and your ads are talking about painting bathrooms, then your landing page really needs to be talking about the same thing. It should be a page dedicated to bathroom painting, maybe some photos, some examples of past work, what's involved in painting a bathroom, and that sort of thing. It's going to do 2 things. That person's more likely to convert because they are seeing exactly what they came to look for. It's very specific. They're looking for bathroom painters. And it's also going to increase your landing page experience and help your quality score. So it's going to cost less per click, less per conversion, and away you go. So I think you really need to be making sure that you're not just sending everybody to your homepage. If you can, build out some landing pages that are relevant to the keywords and the ads that are associated. I'm jumping around a little bit here, so I do apologize. It's a little tough to determine where to start and stop, but stick with me. I want to jump into campaign settings and just do a quick run through there to make sure you're sort of set up with all of that properly. Click on your campaign on the left, go to settings, and it should bring up this screen. I'm going to pop that down for now. If we run down, campaign name says, obviously, goal. Personally, I don't like to have a goal, maybe because I'm a little bit more hands-on and I sort of know what I'm doing, but probably also I don't fully believe in Google's automated systems yet. It's getting there, but I would say for you guys, don't worry about a goal at this point. Networks. I'm okay with the search partners, but if you're doing a search campaign, I would untick display network at this point. Just leave display ads for the display network specifically. Locations is an interesting one. So let's say these guys are painters in Brisbane, and they can only physically go to a certain location to paint. So in theory, you only want to be targeting people in Brisbane, like houses in Brisbane. That's my opinion anyway. So if you have a look at the target section down here, there's 3 different options. And and of course Google is recommending the one that's the broadest and is going to show to the most people, so they can get as many clicks as possible. But in this instance, I really believe that this should be the correct selection here, because we're only wanting to target people in Brisbane, because they have a house that needs painting in Brisbane. So these two other options have a lot to do with Google's algorithm and predicting what people are thinking or doing or intending. So at this point, if you have a brick and mortar company, I think you probably want to be in targeted locations. And a lot of the time, even if you're in e-commerce and you're just targeting something like Australia, I still would think that this is probably the best option because you're physically sending it to an Australia. But there are instances where these other two options are applicable. But I'd say for a lot of people, it's probably just in your targeted location. And then similarly, if you're trying to exclude people, let's say for some reason, you're a painter in Queensland, but you didn't want to paint in Brisbane. The people in Brisbane are terrible, terrible people, and they have horrible houses. You could do people in your targeted location, so you could make it in Queensland, and then you could exclude people in Brisbane. So if you do it again, if you're doing brick and mortar physical business, I like these two settings right here, and it's a bit of a trap. If you don't untick this, it can start showing your ad to people who aren't really relevant. So just keep an eye on that. Save, please. English, obviously. Budget. Budget is actually an interesting one because a lot of people will have all of these campaigns, and you set a budget at the campaign level. So these items on the left here, you assign an individual budget. But a lot of people don't actually realize that you can share a budget between the campaigns. So a lot of the time, I think people will set up one campaign only because they think they can only do a budget for that one campaign, and they're scared about overspending. But you can apply a shared budget. So basically, you can go up into Tools and look at the shared budgets and set up a shared budget, and then you can apply different campaigns to that shared budget. So just say you've only got, like $100 to spend on the day, you can apply all of your campaigns to that, and Google will basically not exceed that $100, but let the campaigns just run as usual. Delivery method I would use as standard. If you're not hitting your budget, you're leaving money on the table, then maybe you look at accelerated. Do a little bit of research on those first, but as a default, I will keep it on standard. Bidding. Oh, this is a tough one, and it's a big topic. So I might actually come back to that one. Start and end dates. Obviously, if you have particular start and end dates, usually it's just let it go. Ad rotation. We talked about that previously. I like to do not optimize, rotate them indefinitely. Campaign URL, don't worry about any of this sort of stuff. And I think that'll do for now. So yeah, if you just run through and look at all those aspects, I think we'll be good. So why would bidding get its own own section? Well, because it's complicated and it's annoying, and it can be a little bit hard to explain. Basically, look, I would just recommend if you aren't super advanced and you don't have a lot of data in your account, just going with manual CPC. Yeah, I like enhanced CPC. Adds a little bit of their algorithm to it without fully taking control. But manual CPC, yeah, you basically just bid on your keywords. So you can bid on at the keyword level, ad group level, campaign level. I usually do it at keywords because you have more control at that point. In terms of the other bid strategies you can use, so these are the main ones, and as I said, I use manual CPC a lot of the time. These other ones, not so much. The other two that I will, generally look at will be these two, and these are automated bid strategies that Google has. And they are pushing the hell out of these things. If you get a call from one of their reps, they're going to be, banging on about target CPA or target ROAS. And a lot of sort of experts are talking about how good Google's machine learning is getting these days, and it's true. Their algorithm and their data is immense, and it's a lot better than it was, say, a year ago. But that said, I think I would still stick with manual CPC if you aren't super active and are sort of new to this. Target CPA and target ROAS are good if you've got a lot of conversion data, and you sort of need like a decent amount of conversion data because Google is looking at who's converting and looking at all the signals and all the variables, and it's deciding, okay, like who is most likely to convert. Let's show the ad to these people based on all of these signals. Instead of where we do manual CPC, we're just kind of showing the ad to everyone, and then we sort of figure out who's most likely to convert. So in theory, it makes sense. Like these should be better judging by the amount of data that they have. So, why not use it? Well, you have to have a lot of conversion data, and it has to be like fairly quickly flowing through your account. You can't have like one conversion a week. You have to have a decent level, a decent volume of conversions, so that the algorithm can actually learn. So if you do have a solid amount of conversion data coming through, it's possibly worth testing, one of these two. Target CPA, which is a target cost per acquisition. It's in general better if you're just trying to acquire clients. So if you have like a service-based business. Target return on ad spend is generally better for something like e-commerce, where you put $1 in ads and you can see that you got $3 out on total sales. And target CPA, you sort of bid how much you're willing to spend to acquire a customer. So just say you were a dentist and you knew that your average lifetime value of a customer was, I don't know, $10,000. You'd probably be willing to bid, like a couple $100 at least to acquire that client. So that's what target CPA is. So I would encourage you, if you don't have a lot of conversions, if you're not using conversion tracking, don't even look at these two. You're in manual CPC land. But if you do have conversions flowing through at a decent rate, do a bit of research on these two and run some experiments, which I'll get into next. But yeah, stick with manual CPC for now if you're not at that level. As I said in the last video, if you want to use target CPA and target ROAS versus manual CPC bidding, I would suggest running a campaign experiment and testing it. I'm not going to go through how to actually set it up. There's plenty of YouTube videos on doing that. But basically, the reason you would do a campaign experiment, click your campaign, go to drafts and experiments on the side here, and then walk through, is that you can basically say, let's say you have a $20 budget allocated to a campaign, and you wanted to see how manual CPC did versus target CPA. You can take half of that budget, say $10 a day, and use the manual CPC bidding, and then another $10 per day and allocate it to the target CPA bidding. So essentially you're split testing, in this case, bidding. You can do it with anything, any other settings in a campaign, and that's what you do when you go through the campaign draft and setting it up. So basically what it lets you do is you can test it for a period of time, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. I've had campaign experiments that I've run for 4 or 5 months because I wanted to get so much data, because the amount of money that was going through that campaign, I couldn't afford to be wrong. And the two experiments were just neck and neck the whole way, and I just couldn't figure out which way I wanted to go. But I would highly suggest getting in there if you have a decent conversion flow coming through and you're starting to think about target CPA and target ROAS. Run some experiments for a little bit and look at your return on investment, look on your cost per acquisition, and compare how they went. And also I would encourage you, the campaign for the experiment, have a look at some of the charts and some of the graphs and see how the machine learning is progressing. If you're gradually seeing like the cost per acquisition going down or the return on investment going up, give it a little bit more time to see if it's actually learning and improving. So don't just cut it off, or don't just look at the whole time frame as one snapshot. See if there's any progression there. But yeah, have a play around with the campaign experiments. A lot of people peddle Google smart bidding, including Google and a lot of experts. In general, across my accounts, I find that it works better at this point, like half the time. I know a lot of experts are saying it's beating theirs like 90% of the time. Mine's not even close to that. So for now, I'm doing better with manual bidding on at least half of my accounts. So please test, see how you go. Let's talk about budget again for a second. And a lot of the time people ask me, like, what should their budget be, or how much should they spend? And I probably should have touched on this earlier. And I actually have a blog post about this on my website, so feel free to check that out. But you really need to be, firstly, tracking conversions, because if you're not tracking conversions, then you're not measuring your success at all on this platform. If you're not, I actually, for the most part, don't want to advertise if I don't have conversion tracking on here, on Google Ads. There are times where more awareness-based campaigns are needed, so conversions aren't as emphasized. But if you're trying to make money and acquire clients, you need conversion tracking on. So firstly, you got to have conversion tracking on. And secondly, you need to be measuring what it's costing you per conversion. So whether that's cost per acquisition, or how much money is going in and how much money you're getting out in sales. So that's more target return on investment, return on ad spend, or ROI. So I think that you really need to be focused on that. And if I came to you and said, hey, I've got this like wonderful machine that if you put like $1 in, it will give you $3 out, and that's guaranteed. How much money would you like to put through this machine? Your answer to that should be infinity, as much money as I can get my hands on. So the way I think of Google Ads and marketing in general is it's like that. It's like a machine. If you're tracking it, then you can be confident that the numbers are right and that the output is right. So why would you not put as much money as you can through to get, to churn out the more sales and more clients? I mean, there's obviously times where you don't want that, where you have limited class sizes, or you can't handle more work, or things like that. But if you need more work, then I just don't see why you wouldn't spend more money. So this is a long way of saying that your budget is probably going to be handcuffed by cash flow, I would say. Small business, that's always it. But if you're conversion tracking and you're doing really well, maybe consider upping your budget until you're not hitting your budget every day. Try and get those systems in place so that you're measuring how successful you are at converting and what it's costing you to convert. And if that return on investment is good, then you can be confident that you can increase your budget much higher. So how do you know if your account is actually going well? I mean, at the end of the day, in my opinion, if it's profitable. So if the amount of money that you're putting in is justifying the amount of money you're getting out, or the clients that you're getting, then it's successful. But there's a lot of metrics in AdWords that make it hard to tell how your account is actually doing. So I figured I'd just show a few here, and we can just talk about those. Impressions, obviously you want to see that your ad is actually getting shown. So you want to see impressions. This is real account data too, by the way. The average cost, that's the average cost per click that you're paying. And this is at the campaign level too, by the way. So you can dig deeper into the ad groups and those sort of things, and then the keywords. But a good way to sort of overall assess your account, start high and work down and drill down into it. So start at the campaign level. Look at things like impression share, which is right here. So basically, impression share is how often your ad was shown when it could have been shown. So you I would say as a rough rule, try and get it as high as you can. If it's like 80 or 85%, that's good. Affect impression share. I think a lot of the time is probably the amount of money that you're bidding per click on the keyword. So if you bump up your bids, you might see an increase in impression share because your average position might go up. So if you're willing to pay a little bit more, Google might bump your ad up a couple of notches. So in that instance, you might go from being on the second page to the first page, which would boost up your impression share. Another thing could be your quality score, so make sure you check your quality score. If your quality score is good, they're going to show your ad more often. If it's not, they're not going to. And another thing that it will impact your impression share is your budget. So if your budget runs out halfway through the day, you're only going to show your ad to 50% of the people. So if you are hitting your budget, then there's a good chance that your budget is impacting your impression share. If you're not hitting your budget, then you need to look at some other factors. What's your average position like? Is it like 4 or higher? Because if it's 4 or higher, it's not even on the front page. So maybe look at bumping up your bids to try and do that. So impression share and average position, yeah, they tie into each other, quite a bit. If you have a low impression share, I would check average position straight away to see how that is. And then click-through rate, that really ties into average position as well, because the higher your ad is, it's pretty well known through ads and organic results that the higher you are, the more clicks you get, and it tapers off as it goes down the page because people just don't get to the bottom of the page. After like the top 3 or 4 results, it drops off like pretty significantly. So you really want to make sure that you're pushing up there. So the click-through rate a lot of the time is directly correlated to average position. And if you look at it on a graph, like this is about a year time period, they're inversely sort of correlated in this graph. So if you scroll along, like in September, the average position was 1.5 and the click-through rate was 11%. The next month, our average position it increased by 0.2 spots, but the click-through rate went up 4.5%, which is huge, right? So a click-through rate between 11 and 15 is awesome. So effectively, according to this, and this account looks like, you can pretty safely say there's a inverse relationship here, that if you can somehow bump up your average position, you're going to get a higher click-through rate, which hopefully will lead to more clicks and conversions. So let me just collapse that. So moving along, conversions, we've got conversion tracking. We want to be knowing what our conversions are. Conversion value, in this instance, we've got this measuring the sales at checkout. So the dollar value that's going through the checkout. And that's just through Shopify. And usually, a lot of the time, you need a developer to insert some code for that, but definitely worth doing because you can get an accurate ROI. Great thing about e-commerce. Conversion rate, what percentage of people who click or end up converting? Those are pretty solid conversion rates. And back to the click-through rate. A lot of people ask, like, what is a good click-through rate? I've read articles where people say like 1% or higher is a good click-through rate. Personally, I'm never happy with like a 1% click-through rate. Obviously, the higher the better. If all of my ad groups and keywords are relevant and all tied together, I like to try and at least shoot for 7%. If I'm getting lower than that, then I think I really need to review my ad copy, my positioning, my placements, my targeting, my bid adjustments, those kind of things. So I think as a rule, maybe try and get 5% or higher. I don't think you should be happy with 1. Again, it depends on the niche and the competition, but I'm almost never happy with 1. So conversion rate and then profit. So what profit is here, if you go into the column section here, you can actually set up a custom column. I'm not going to do it now and go through with exercise, but if you go in there, go down the bottom, go to custom columns, you can use these other metrics and perform like a function with them. So what we've got here, we roughly know that the costs associated with these sales for this client are about 80%. So we got about a 20% profit. So all we're doing here is basically taking the conversion value, multiplying it by 0.2 to get 20% of that figure there here. So it just helps us with reporting. Like if you want to output it to Data Studio, or send it out to some other, feed it into anywhere else, or even just if we want to like just log in and see how much profit we made for these different times, then this is a great way to do it. So that's just a really quick overview of a few metrics I thought would be important. There's plenty more, but I think if you focus on these, that'll get you a lot of the way. Can be a lot of ways to quantify a conversion, and I think it's beyond the scope of this whole video, unfortunately, but it's worth you putting in time to learn conversions and just figure out how you're going to track conversions within your business and deciding what exactly a conversion is for you. So for a lot of people, it's sales at a checkout. For e-commerce, it's almost always just how much money went through the checkout. For like a brick and mortar business that would be like a service-based business, it's harder because people aren't buying online and they're not buying somewhere that you can measure it. They'll make an appointment, or they'll make a booking, or they'll just come in and they'll see your stuff online and then they'll come into the store. It's like, it's really, really tough to track. And a lot of it, you can't get any more granular than sort of a phone call or a form submission. But then it's sort of back of the napkin type stuff where that, okay, for every call that we get, we roughly convert like, half of those people. So, how much did we spend on calls, on ads that resulted in calls? We know that we convert half of those people. So what is our cost per conversion there? So you sort of just have to think through your business and like how you're going to measure conversions and how you're going to implement that. Like I said, for e-commerce, it's pretty easy. It's just what goes through the checkout. So they've got it easy. For brick and mortar, you could do something like phone calls. So you can actually have, if somebody calls from an ad, you can stipulate that you want to measure fire a conversion if the phone call is longer than a set amount of time. Generally, if it's something like a minute, it indicates that somebody's probably quite a hot lead. They're looking for a lot of information, or they're booking or something. So 1 minute might be a good suggestion. Calls to a phone number on your website is another really good one. So basically, what it does is you can insert a piece of code on your website where people, if they click on an ad and come to your website, it replaces your phone number with a local Google forwarding number. So when they call that number, it fires the conversion but still gets connected to your business. And that's only people that click on your ad and they've been cookied. So don't freak out about that. It works really well to measure how successful calls are. And again, you can sort of stipulate how long you want that call to be to fire as a conversion. So I mean, that's one way you can do it. Another way is actions on your website. So if people they purchase or they end up at a page views and are good, like if somebody opts in and it redirects them to a thank you page, or even just a contact form that goes to a new page. You could make that a conversion, and if you have a CRM on the other end, you could feed it into that and look at how we're converting. Otherwise, you can just do, again, like back in the napkin stuff. How many people that put in these online quote inquiries do we convert? Is it 30%? Then, okay, how much money do we spend to acquire each of these inquiries? We convert at 30%. How much does that cost per lead? So I'm not going to go through all this. Conversions are actually a bit of a deep topic, but I would say that pay attention to how you're going to implement it. Make sure it's working. And I would encourage you to read a little bit about conversion windows and attribution modeling, because they can be a little bit dependent on business. So maybe just do a YouTube search on those guys, because this in particular is a huge topic and it goes across Google Analytics as well. Can be super infuriating. But do a little bit of research on it. Just maybe do some light stuff. But again, I would really encourage you to look into conversion tracking and see what's available. I really hope this has been helpful. I haven't tried to cover everything. It's just not possible, unfortunately. But I've really tried to hone in on some key factors that you can look at when trying to improve your account or just see how you're going if you're managing it yourself. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm at lanternroom.com.au. My name is Ryan. You can email me at ryan@lanternroom.com.au. Thanks for watching.